Jupiter entering Cancer, which is happening on June 9th at 5:02 p.m. Eastern Time. For context, Jupiter typically changes signs once a year. We're currently on a pattern of it changing late spring. This is still technically late spring because summer will not have started for another 2 weeks. So last year it changed signs in May. And I just want to back up and place us in time there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Jupiter in Gemini first, because we're still in it right now. And it's a great opportunity because this is only happening in a few days, but we're going to be starting a year-long chapter. So as this chapter is coming to a close, I want to talk a little bit about Jupiter in Gemini first. Jupiter represents luck, expansion, wisdom. It's all about growth. So if you're looking at your natal Jupiter placement, it could be where you are going to have luck in this lifetime, where you will naturally grow, or where you're being encouraged to grow. So again, everything has multiple interpretations because it depends on a lot of different conditions. And it's been in Gemini since May 25th of 2024. So we've just passed the year mark. So it's going to be in the sign for slightly over a year. It's a week and change, or year and change. And Gemini is chatty. It's the teacher, researcher, a little bit of a gossip. Contrarian. There's a duality to Gemini. Gemini has the twins. So you can look at your chart now and think about which houses do you have in Gemini? Where have you been expanding? How have you grown in general? And if you want to target it more, how have you grown as relates to communication, learning, researching, understanding in the chart areas that Gemini covers? As the example for me, to give us a little bit of a context here, I have Gemini, as I mentioned, in my 12th house, which means over this past year, it would suggest that I have had expansion when it comes to learning about the depths of my soul, learning about, I don't want to say weaknesses, but learning about areas for improvement. What are things that I do that self-sabotage me? You know, how can I make shifts that are fundamental? Also with the 12th house, it's really common to be working on something in private. So I'm growing something, but I'm kind of growing it behind the scenes. And I'm working on it off by myself. So I'm not always revealing everything I'm up to at any given point in time. I reveal it when I feel like I want to reveal it, when I want to share it. But I'm growing it in the 12th house, in the shadows, for me. And I can laugh, I mentioned this before, that I have launched my business. So I launched my business a couple weeks later. I was already starting to work on it. Like I had the concept, the idea, I was setting some things up in May, but it formally launched in June, just a few weeks after Gemini moved in, Jupiter moved into Gemini for me. But I have spent the entire last year changing my business, like making shifts to it. So it's like, okay, a few months later, I was like, okay, well, how can I grow it? Well, I knew I wanted to add astrology. So then a few months later, I immediately hit the ground. Once I launched it, I hit the ground running. I started in private working on astrology, and I wanted to add those services. And then I added that. And then I wanted to add a planner. So it's like, let me add a planner. And then I added that. And let me add some other services. In there, I also started teaching on Insight Timer. And so then teaching became part of my business. So all I have been doing is growing. And some of those things are in private. And then some of those things I then chose at certain points to release. But my business has been going through that growth for myself and through that process as part of my spiritual work. So I've been learning about the things that are making me tick. Where am I off balance? Where am I doing too much? Jupiter is an expander. If I'm creating too much in this space for me, if I'm weighing myself down. So these are just some examples. After Jupiter enters Cancer, which will be my first house, which is in the light of day, aligning with my identity, how convenient that I didn't even do this on purpose. That I was planning, okay, well, I want to make some changes to my business. I want to recalibrate it. I want to give it a new sense of identity, which is what I would be doing. So I'd be continuing to grow it. But instead of growing it just kind of in the shadows and doing my own soul work and things for myself and trying to figure out how am I limiting myself and what's working and what's not working and what's supporting me and not supporting me, then that means in this year ahead, what I'm doing is more front and center. It's more visible. It's more tied to who I am. It means having more growth in my identity. And it can be, I'm talking about work in this example with my business, in part because my business is me. Like in many ways, I'm like, I am the product. I am the service because I'm providing the readings for people. It's things that are coming from my mind through my intuition, my channeling, all that stuff. So, and intrinsically for me in this example I'm giving has to be tied to me because of that. But when we're looking at Jupiter going into Cancer, then I can say, all right, well, how can I expand in how I identify, in my labels? I've recently been able to add, well, now I'm an author because I wrote a book that got published. So I'm already starting to have some ways that I can shift how I am identifying myself, how I am putting myself out there. Maybe it is some sort of expansion related to my appearance. So it could be, it's not necessarily a self-confidence thing, because that's more second house, but like, this is what I mean. So I know this is kind of a long example, but I just wanted to contextualize with something to give everyone a little bit more of the nuance here. So yeah, Chantel, if it's first house, then it's exactly what I was just describing, where it's growth in your sense of self, your understanding of your sense of self, because it's about wisdom. It's not necessarily that we're running around talking about it. That would be if Mercury going into Cancer, which is separate, will be happening as well. But it's about that growth. It's how can we bloom and blossom, and where can we have hopefully some luck and fortune moving in that space as well. You can think of it as the flow of energy moving into that area of life. And it gets to be there for an entire year. Yes, it will retrograde at some point, but that's fine. It will still be moving through that area of life and allowing us to net expand. Cancer is representing caretaker, intuition, ancestral history, emotional connection. So with all of that, Jupiter is expanding intuition, expanding your connection to history, memories, caretaking. What I'm hoping is because it's a collective planet that maybe it will expand our sense of caretaking in society. So if we are all having more of an open heart, if we are looking to connect with each other, looking to be in tune to one another through our intuition, through compassion, so those are things that we can also watch out for, not even just for our own chart, but looking at the collective. Okay, well, what will that do? What kind of ripple effects will that have? If we've had Jupiter and Gemini, it's how has our communication shifted and expanded over the last year? Information sharing. Has it been too much? And I'll say for some people it probably has been. So now if we're expanding a bit of those Cancerian ideas, what would that mean for the collective? Now, for placing us in time here, Jupiter is going to be in Cancer from June 9th of this year to June 30th of 2026. So again, we'll have a year and a few weeks, actually. So a little bit over a year, slightly longer than Jupiter being in Gemini. So over that coming year, we're being called to grow in this Cancerian part of our chart, whatever house areas, life areas we have contained, as well as getting in touch with our emotions, our intuition, with our origins, our ancestry, our culture. What wisdom can we glean? What can we call in and make space for? Because if we want to expand, we have to make sure we have room. So we can think about that as well as we are preparing to enter this next chapter. Is there anything that we could maybe shed, or are there areas where we want to grow more than others in the Cancerian realm? We could set those intentions before we get in there. In Ellen's example here, in her birth chart, if she natally has Jupiter is normally in Leo, which is the sign after Cancer. That means that you're going to have your Jupiter return in 2026, which is a whole fun thing. So Jupiter going into your 8th house is an expansion, wisdom coming in about your mental health, sense of transformation. So you could have like major life overhauls, adjustments, huge growth, because the 8th house is also about transformation and releasing things so that you can be reborn, do some things differently. So if you have that with Jupiter, Jupiter is like really supporting, like, let's break some barriers, let's do something different, but we're coming at it from the Cancerian lens of it's very compassionate. So it's not reckless, it's very intentional. It's emotionally, intuitively aligned. It also has mental health in there, as well as contracts. So it's kind of builds off of the 7th house, which is a committed relationship. So it's contracts. So it has kind of some of these other, it has a lot of different modalities that are in there as well. Chantel, 4th, 5th, 6th house. Yep, curious, as I have Jupiter already. So you would have a Jupiter return, which means that you'll want to pay attention to, especially because it's going to retrograde. So you want to know when the retrograde is happening, what degree point it's at. So when you have a Jupiter return, it means like those days, it might just be one day, but it also could be multiple. If you have a retrograde and it backs over, then you could have 3, where it's lighting it up. It's like super, super expansion. It's connecting you back to the things that you're supposed to be learning, the things that are lighting you up, that are allowing you to just completely expand your mind, your sense of reality and how you operate, luck. You could be receiving a lot. So those would be days to definitely circle on your calendar if it's one, if it's multiple, for really significant personal growth. And you mentioned before that that was in your 5th house. So really significant personal growth as relates to fun, pleasure, dating, children. So however that aligns for you, you could kind of plan accordingly to say, okay, well, this could be like a really big day. There's just a lot of energy. You could harness it intentionally by doing certain activities that align with those areas of life on that day, or just kind of see what comes up and what sparks. But you would likely experience a feeling of being pushed to just get bigger, to think not even necessarily outside the box, but just to be more expansive, to be more, not necessarily do more, because that's Mars, but like being more, understanding more. And so it wouldn't, so yes, yes, it could also mean luck in the year ahead in this area of life, because it's inherently infused in this area of chart, and that would be happening for everyone. But you would have these supercharged days where it's picking up on your natal Jupiter. So those would be like even more amped up. But generally for the collective, we could think, where might we have more luck in this area of life? If we've had some light, some wisdom, some bright spots, some opportunities for growth in Gemini over the last year, then having that be sprinkled into Cancer this year for everyone. For you, you're just going to also have boom, boom, wherever Jupiter is lining up with your natal Jupiter, those are going to be like hot spots for major expansion. For 10th house in Cancer, so it's expansion in your career over the next year, And your career may inherently be something that is Cancerian. So maybe it's people related, caretaking related, intuition, compassion related, emotionally based, and also maybe it's not. It could mean just that you're making sure to infuse that. You could be encouraged either to grow your career. So when we mentioned Jupiter, when we mentioned Mercury going into Cancer, that would be, if that was in your 10th house, it's thinking about your career. And this is, how do I grow my career? But we're also going to want to grow it by infusing it with the Cancerian ideas. So if you don't have a long-term career that's following anything Cancerian, there's a nudge there to infuse that. We're also growing those areas. We're not just growing the career to grow the career, we're growing it and also pulling in the Cancer energies as well, which could mean softening it in some ways, thinking about our boundaries, thinking about where we are kind of over giving to other people. Maybe we're saying yes a lot in our career, and because we think we're being helpful, we want to help other people, we want to do that, but while we're growing, we'll have to check with that. How can we make sure to lean into listening to ourselves so we know when we can set the boundary and say no for a sense of self-care, because if we're always caring for others, we're never caring for ourselves. So that's a little bit of a battle that Cancers tend to have, Virgos can have to a degree. So there's a lot of ways to potentially apply it depending on what your current relationship is with your career ultimately.